Cool. Okay, so right before the break, we just went ahead and started setting up the HTML pages. We got right up, we're ready to do the form now, which involves processing. So as I put the form together, I was thinking we'll do it just one line at a time, one input, and then we'll process that input to see each one individually. But doing your homework, you could put the whole form together and then come back and do that. And this example that we just did right before the break, the first video here, we're going to use this example the whole semester for class examples. That way we won't have to do HTML again. We'll just open up the class example one, or really every week make a copy of the class example one, and then do the new stuff. And same thing with the programming assignments, which is the biggest part of your biggest points. Oh, yes, and the first programming assignment, since that AWS stuff took so long, I did go ahead and change programming assignment 1 is due next Tuesday, so it's due with the module 2 stuff. Hopefully, we'll still get the module 2 stuff in, but yeah, I want to make sure everybody gets a good, solid foundation. So if you need a little bit more time, let me know. We can add in a little bit of wiggle room on those due dates and the late penalties and things. But we are using the same one the whole semester, so you don't want to be too far behind on it. We should be back on track before long. That AWS stuff just took a long, long time last week. Okay, so getting back to this, we're ready to put our form together and do some processing with the PHP. And this is, well, the first part that you probably didn't see in the 153 class. I think the textbook in the 153 class just had you put something in there. Let's see. I think I'll do an
it was real skimpy. It was like
yeah, because
barely showed you how to do it, so I almost had to relearn it.
We want to know what that stuff means, because there's different ways we can send stuff to the server. We have multiple ways to send stuff to the server, so we'll go over that. But I think I'll do an input first. That way we have something to send to the server whenever we're talking about that part. And I'm just going to do an input, then we'll go over and do some PHP with that input. And so it'll be a little back and forth, but we'll see each one individually. So form elements, our inputs don't have line breaks included, so I'm going to wrap everything in a paragraph tag. I'll wrap each one in paragraph tags. The first one on that list, I gave everybody a copy of it, but should see there, one of the things we need is a text box to put the logo, right? Put your company name, and then this hypothetical company here is going to print your company name on a pen and send you a bunch of those pens. So we need a text box to put that in. And that is our basic input. If we just put an input element, it's going to be a text box. But that's also going to make it look a little bit different than everything else. So all our other inputs, we specify the type attribute. We say what type it is. So on the text one, I always like to go ahead and put the type attribute as well. So the input is going to be a text input. We don't need a default value. We do need a name. The server needs to know, the server will recognize this input based off the name attribute. So everything we're sending to the server has to have the name attribute included. So I'm going to call this I'll call it logo. I'm thinking there might be some better words, because in week 7 we're going to upload a graphical logo, but I'll come up with something better then, because it's whatever you want printed on the pen.
So we don't need to put an ID in there unless we're going to end up using some JavaScript with this maybe too, in which case then we need an ID, right? Because exactly. Your side uses name and JavaScript uses ID, and we can call them the same thing.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Server side typically uses name. Client side typically uses ID, and style sheet typically uses class. So that's our three identifiers. Those aren't hard, fast rules. We can mix and match them, but that's what it's going to do by default. That's what we're going to use most of the time. Name on the server.
So it's okay if we put an ID tag in there while we're at it, since.
Yeah, if you want to. And
well, yeah, because
personally, I always put the same name and ID to keep them straight.
Yeah, that's what I would do too. I mean, but it's just that both programs can access it.
It's a good idea too. We will do that in week 6. We're going to put IDs in a couple of things when we get to Ajax. For now, I'm just going to go with the name, but you can, and they only look the same to us. When the computer processes it, names and IDs do not look anything alike, so the computer will never get them confused, which means it's a good place that we can use the same name and ID on something. We need some words for that, right? So I'm going to skip the label tag and everything. I'm just going to put words right before the input in the box. So message, I'll just put message. That'll work. So what message do you want printed on the pen? And that'll give us our first input on the form. There you go, the order page. So there's the form. So what message goes on the pen, and the user can type some stuff in here, and we need a submit button. And then what's the form going to do? Well, maybe a reset button too. So this is another one of those out of order things. I know I'm going to put the submit button and reset button down at the bottom. So I'm going to leave a little bit of white space and put a paragraph down here. And submit and reset are special things. We don't have to use regular buttons for those. We can use an input with type equals submit, all in lowercase letters. And the value attribute is the words that appear on it. So I'm going to put order on the button. And then go ahead and the reset button will be very similar. Well, I'll wait to do that. But type equals reset. Value, I'll just put a reset form here. And I'm going to turn word wrap off to express this point. So notice that those two lines are very similar. That's going to happen a lot. It's going to happen a lot when we get to PHP. So there's going to be a lot of copy and paste. And when you're putting things together, just a little bit of forethought on what's going to be similar and stuff save you a lot of effort by using copy and paste. Because we could have just copied that line and changed the word that says submit to reset and the value that says order to reset form. And those probably aren't in a good place. So I'm going to add a class name in so I can do some styling on them. And I'll just call them buttons. Class equals buttons. And that way I can refer to them in the style sheet because I'm probably not going to be happy with where it puts them by default. Or the way they look by default. So I reload the page. There we go. Got an order button and reset form. Yeah, they don't really match the rest of the page. I'm going to go to the style sheet and add some styling on those. Remember, to get a class, we use the dot. So I called those buttons, so dot buttons. And then we can add some styling to them. So like a margin of 2.3 EM, just to space them out from everything else. Margin top, that way they're a little bit below the form elements. Could put them on the left. They're probably okay where they are, but they need some coloring. So the color for the text on them, I'm just going to make a blue. So little bit of red, a little bit of green, and then a whole lot of blue. So 1212 FF. That should be a pretty dark blue. Then maybe make them bigger, like padding, add 1.2 EM all the way around all the words. And I'll throw in a border to make them stand out. So like 3 pixels, outset border, and something blue again. Maybe a lot of red, a lot of red, a little bit of green, and a lot of blue. I'll see what color that looks like. And I think it's still loading from the cache again. Notice it's all, we didn't change any HTML, so it's doing that load from cache thing again. So if I do a hard reload on this, purplish, that's fine. Just something there. Maybe I'll put a shadow behind them. Remember, you can also put box shadows. Not really important for this style here, just to remind you about it. It'll take 3 numbers. So like 4 pixels and 5 pixels. That's how far to the right and how far down it goes. And then the blur radius of 7 pixels, that's how far it would take to fade out completely, because we don't want solid colors on shadows. Shadows should kind of fade out. And then what color is it? So I'll do like 45, 45, 45, which should be a gray, kind of a dark gray. And yeah, maybe I will take some of that red off there. So maybe instead of A2, put 7.2. That way it's all blue. Okay, that's much more blue. But yeah, that was just kind of randomness in the color picking and stuff, but made the buttons bigger. That way they're easily pressed on a phone screen. That's important nowadays, right? We need to have, a lot of people are going to go to the website on phones, so we want to make sure the buttons are plenty big enough to hit them with the finger. And then by default, the reset form should clear stuff. And when we press order or the submit type input, it tries to do some stuff. Actually did all this. So it changed our page address. So it's trying to do stuff with what's on that form automatically. Notice it added a question mark, the word logo, which remember was the name that I put in that input box. And I just hit random keys with my left hand, so that looks like probably the random keys that I pressed. That's going to be important because that's the transmission of the data. It added it into the URL. So that's how we get data to the server. So if we go back over to our HTML, we need to specify how we're going to do that. So what it just did there, what it tries to do is just transmit the data. And we have to say how it's being transmitted. So to just transmit the data, our method is get. Get, well, over the decades now, it has slightly changed from the original, but I did quite a bit of double checking, looked at lots of different reference material, and it seems like it still mentions that it's the original setup for the what goes in our method, which is get transmits the data, which is what we see kind of in the background on my screen where we see that data appended on the URL. Post originally recreates it. Anymore, it just transmits it, but it doesn't show up in the URL. We can't see it. We'll see that in a second. And then we'll see later in the semester we'll use request. Request is the entire transmission. So no matter, in our HTML, we'll say either to send it with get or post. And mostly we'll probably use post. The default is get. Post is a little more secure. As you can see in the background, we can see the data in the URL, which means so can anybody else on the internet, on any server that this passes through as it moves its way across the internet. So it's probably better to not see that. So that's why we usually use post method. I want to show what get method looks like though. And then we'll also put in the attribute action, which is the script we want to run. I'm just going to call this confirm.php because it is a script. Stuff needs to happen, so we do need that .php extension. Because the server will recognize the .php and run that script. The server will know what to do when it sees that extension. So again, file extensions are arbitrary, but we often want to use one that the machine we're on knows what to do with, and the server will know what to do with the PHP. And the action is the script that we want to run. So I'm going to save that with method to get and action to confirm. And here in just a moment, we're going to change that method to post and look at the difference between them. And then we'll probably use post for everything throughout this class. So I reload the page now. All that stuff's there. I'm going to go to that link so that all that stuff is no longer in that address. And I'm going to type in some sort of message. I'll call it test1, then hit the order button. Oh, well, it tried to do something, but we haven't created that script yet, right? So we need to create that script first. But you'll see what this looks like. So it called that script, then a question mark. And I like to think about the question mark of hook, like a hook. It looks like it. We're hooking some things on here. Like we're going to change some stuff to it. What we're going to change is there's some value called, we're referring to as logo that has been assigned test+1. So let's go create that script. Back over to the text editor, a new script, and this is the PHP script, which means we need the tags to make it run. And something in the chat room. I don't like disappearing buttons. I like when buttons are there the whole time. So I'm going to save this again in the same place as confirm.php. And whatever's in the chat room doesn't seem to be popping up. If I click the button again, will it? Nope, I might have to stop here. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's just how I think about it. It looks like a hook. So we're going to, the hook at the end of a chain. We have a bunch of data. We're navigating to this other address. And on the way there, we're going to chain a bunch of data onto it to just hook a bunch of data on to get drug over there. And then once it's here, well, we want to test every chance we get. So I'm just going to do an echo. I'm just going to print some words back to the screen. I'm going to echo the script connected. So before I even do anything with that data, I'm just going to make sure that the right script loads. So echo some sort of confirmation. All it does now. So now I'm here on the order form, have something put in there. When I hit order, you get that message. It connected, and it was with get method. So we can see it put a question mark, logo equals those words that were typed in there. And that'll be important because when we get to Ajax, we have to manually type that stuff in. Post looks the same, but the big difference is if I come back over here and in the order form, instead of passing it to the server with get method, I'm going to pass it with post method, which is a little more secure. I'm going to pass it with post, reload this. So many changes there. So this is now test 2. I'm going to hit order. So now we can't see that data that was passed in. So it's a little more secure because we can't see it and neither can anybody else on the internet. Right? If it's just openly transmitted across the internet with get method, anybody can see it. But keep in mind what that looked like. Question mark, the name value, the name attribute from that tag equals, so is assigned the data we actually put there. Because when we get to week 6, we will have to start typing that. Whether we're using get or post. They look the same, it's just we can't see it with the post. Which is another one I'll mention now. When we get to that point where we have to actually type it, a really useful trick is to make a little test thing and send it with get method. And that way you know what it looks like, and then you can just copy and paste it. Save you a little bit of time there. So I'm going to hit back. And now we'll do some stuff with that script. So we don't want to just echo a confirmation that it connected. We want to make sure we can load that script into a variable. And this is what I was actually looking for in that first discussion board. We'll set up some variable, or technically resource since we're in PHP. And I'll call this message. That probably would have been a good name, good thing to put on there. I'm going to lose track of that. I'm going to call this logo. And it is being sent from post method. So to get it, we call this $_post. And that's an array. So what is being posted to the server, and if we use get, it's $_get. But whatever is being sent by that method, we can access through an associative array. There's some sort of indexing to the array of things being transmitted. And we don't have to know the order. Like, it's not necessarily numerical indexing. It's set up for associative indexing, which we will talk about more next week, maybe on Thursday, probably next Tuesday. But instead of numbers for indexing, like, there's only one thing now, so we know it's the very first index being sent. But when there's more than one thing, that's a little harder to keep track of or figure out. So we also have associative array indexing where we can use a word. And that word is the name attribute on the form. This input has the name logo. So over here in that array of things being posted, there is an index called logo that we can pull from that array. So we're going to pull that out and stick that into a variable. And since the question often arises, we could use that the whole time. We could put $_post, quote mark logo, quote mark square bracket, every place we wanted to use that term because that's how it's stored. It needs to be really useful to put it in a shorter variable name or something that matches your style, right? Like I usually use camel case, so I find it a lot easier to work with if I put it someplace written in camel case instead of the all capital letters and square brackets and everything. And then along the way of putting it together, it's a good idea to check everything. So let's echo that back to the page and make sure the right thing got uploaded. Because we're using post method now, so we can't just look at the address bar and see if that worked. So back over here, notice I have the same word. I'm not going to reload the page. Those words are still typed in there. But when I hit order, it calls another script. And that script has been changed. So now when I hit order, it's going to call the new version of the script, which will be very useful when you're testing. You don't have to go back and re-enter all the data in your form. Just make sure you use the back button. That way it goes back and the form is still filled out. And you can run the same test over and over and over again. Now when I hit order, it went to the right page. The post method, we can't see the data here. But we can see it echoed back just a string, which is what we were expecting. And yeah, then if I hit back, when you go back, your form is still filled out. So while you're running tests, make sure you use the back button, and then it'll always call the newest version of the script, and you won't have to keep re-entering the form data for a test. So that's the name input. What was the next thing on the list? For ink pens, right? Basically these things, two different things. Right? We either have the clicker pens or something with a cap. And so we got the words to write on them, but we need a color for the casing. Right? People might want to match their company colors, right? If your company has red and yellow colors, you probably want to give people red pens with the color, give people red pens so that it looks like it belongs to your company. So I'm going to create another paragraph. This time I won't spread it out. I probably could have done that here. Yeah, that'll look a little bit better. So instead of spreading this out, I'm just going to put that all in one line. So now all that stuff's in one line. It looks like it fits nicely. We do the same thing with the color input. So some sort of label so the user knows what they're picking. An input for the form, only this time we'll make our type color, just a basic color picker. We need to give it a name, which color will work as a name, nice useful thing. And with a color, we probably want a default setting. If we don't put a default setting, it'll be black. But for ink pens, the default set, it'd probably make more sense to have a default of white, right? White plastic is probably, it's just white is the generic color plastic comes in. So to do a default in there, we use the value attribute and then set that to what we want. And for a color picker, it needs to be a hex value. And white is all on, all ones, which in hex is all Fs. FF, FF, FF. And end the paragraph. So input with type equals color, a name attribute so that we can get it on the other side, over on the server side, and then a default value for it, which I just went with all white, but any hex color would work. Now when we reload the page, we see our color picker. Oh, something in the chat room. And it does not want to load. I don't know why the chat room doesn't. The value it starts at. The default is just the starting value if the user doesn't ask for anything different. So you can see right now, it tries to start at white. If I changed that number, maybe 23 EE32, I save that and reload the page. Now it tries to start with the green pen. So the value it will be if the user does not enter anything. So for an ink pen, probably white seems like a good color for the default. That's why I just put, and white and hex is all Fs. So all on is white and all off is black. So all zeros is black. And then we can go over to our PHP script and make sure that those numbers are coming through. Kind of the same way I'm doing. Well, I might do more than one here in a moment. But we have a resource for our color data, and it is coming by the post method. So $_post gives us an array of things, and then we called that input color. So post is an associative array, so it sorts them by words. And we can use the name attribute from the form. And then we can echo the color back. And while putting the form together, especially here at first, you're going to want to echo things back just to see what the data looks like, see what you have to work with. So reload that. I'm going to pick some random color here and hit order. And you see it loaded in, and it's returned to hex color. I didn't check what the hex color was beforehand, but that seems reasonable. There's a lot of red, just a little blue, and a little green. So that's probably about the color I picked there. Could check it. You always want to confirm things. RGB, HSL, there's the hex. Yeah, I think that was the same one. And now we know when we get to go to do stuff with it, the PHP is giving us a hex value for the color. So the next one on the form, do I still have that list? Why not pull that text file up that I sent you all? So there's the text input, what words get printed on the pen, what color is the pen going to be. Next, we need some radio buttons, the one or the other choice, the circular buttons, where we can't click both of them at the same time, one or the other. And ask the user, do they want caps or clickers? Which type of pen do they want? And then when we get to processing, we'll have two different numbers here, depending on what they chose there. So for radio button, I'll come over here. Again, I'll wrap it in a paragraph tag just to get a line break in it. I'll put style, some sort of words, and then our input tag type equals radio. And this is important. When we have radio buttons, we have to give them the same name attribute. That's how the computer keeps track of, we can only click one at a time. So radio buttons are the ones that are supposed to be just one at a time. So we give all of our radio buttons to go together the same name attribute, and the computer knows to only choose one of those. So name equals, I'll call it style. And then a value to pass in. So if they pick the first one, let's say caps. I'll put a cap. And I'll just put the word cap, and there it is. Somehow my cursor, I lost track of my cursor. And then the other one's going to look exactly the same. So I'm going to hit Control D, as in dinosaur, to duplicate that line. Just have my cursor in there, hit Control D, it duplicates it. And I'll make one called click. And put a little label on it. When I reload the page, there's one more thing we will need here, and you probably already know what it is. So reload that. You see we have those two radio buttons. Check that one. And when I click one of them, the other one unclicks. So we probably want to default on here as well. And a little bit of spacing. That way we can tell which words go with which words. So I'll do the spacing first. I'll just put a non-breaking space. If you remember that, when it loads in the browser, it will ignore any white space. White space is just for the programmer. So if we actually want white space, we have to type in the code for a special character of non-breaking space. Probably more than one. So I'm going to copy that and paste it 3 or 4 times. That way it's spread out. And I will just put caps as the default. So for that, I'm going to write the word check. That's a Boolean attribute. It's either true or false. It's one or the other. That radio button is either checked or it's not checked. So just writing the name of the attribute is enough. A lot of people like to put in something like checked equals checked. That way it matches everything else. But if it's a Boolean attribute, all we actually have to put in is the name of the attribute. I'm just going to write checked there. So now the caps, this type of pin, will be the default, and then they can choose whether they want, if they want a clicker instead. $3.16. Okay, so that spaced them out a little bit. Caps is selected. Clicker is not selected. And then we'll want to process that data, which we'll do the same way. So I'm going to go ahead and finish out the form here real quick. And then we'll get all the processing at once instead of doing them one at a time. Does everything there make sense so far? And with radio buttons, it's important that the names match. Because the next one on that list after the radio buttons is checkboxes. And checkboxes isn't a one or the other, right? We could have lots of checkboxes. We have 10 checkboxes or no checkboxes. It doesn't matter if the user selects all of them, one of them, some of them. The checkboxes are more optional thing. So they'll be put together slightly different. So in the order form, again, I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to copy and paste as much as possible. So I'm going to copy an input and then all those non-breaking spaces to save a little bit of typing. Oh, I guess I could have copied that paragraph tag as well. Style options. And checkboxes for like, do you want some of these options? Like in that text box I put in here, grip pads, the little rubbery piece makes it easier to hold, or just to have 2 checkboxes. I thought it took me a long time to come up with the second option, but on the little clip thing, I was like, oh, well, sometimes those are metal. So that's the 2 options, just to have 2 things there. So I'm going to copy that in there twice, but instead of radio buttons, these are going to be checkbox buttons. And in your text editors, you should be able to double click on the word and select the whole word at once. So I'm going to double click on radio and change that to a checkbox. With checkboxes, we do not want only one at a time check. So we'll need to give each one of these a unique name. So the first one will be grip, and the second one will be metal. And anybody notice how I'm doing that? Since probably kindergarten, you've been taught go right to left, go left to right, top to bottom. But when we're writing code, we end up with situations like this all the time. See how things are lining up vertically because just the way the code's organized? It's actually more productive to go down than across. It's like here, first thing, all I had to do was think about what the type attribute changes to. Well, the type needs to be a checkbox. So then I can go through that list and change them all to checkbox without changing my mind or my frame of thought. Frame of mind stays the same. It's just checkbox, checkbox, checkbox. However many is on that list, go down and change them all, and then change your mind, then one change in the frame of mind. Then the next thing is the name attribute. Then go through and do all the names. And you're not constantly changing your frame of mind. And then come over the next one, the value. I'm going to take value off on the checkbox. So just take that off. Take that off. Don't need to change it. And those are options. So on the last one, check. Oh, I'm going to take that off on both of them. Take that off. Take that off. So that one takes a little bit of practice, but it's actually more productive. To get a copy, like the initial starting copy of all those lines are going to be the same, and then go down instead of across. Because then if you go across, it's like, you think about what this needs to be. Then you change your mindset to think about what this next one needs to be. Change your mindset to what the next one needs to be. And you keep doing that all the way across. And then you go down to the next line and you do the same thing. You keep changing your mind over and over and over again every time, repeatedly. So it's better just to set your mindset, go down, then change it once and go down. It can be a lot more productive when writing code. So that gives us some checkboxes. Call one of them rubber grip and the other one metal clip. Just a couple options that could come on a pin. We'll reload those. Then we have these checkboxes. Oh, whoops. I don't need the word style there twice. Take that out of there, and that's the general process with programming, right? Oh, I don't need the word style there at all. That was just an extra copy. We think about what needs done, go put a first draft of it together, and then give it a test and make the adjustments, fix the typos and things like that. There we go. So now we got checkboxes, and the radio buttons, when we click one, the other one unclicks. The checkbox, we can check them both, or either one, or uncheck both of them, and it'll be fine. Multiple options. And I just noticed something. You look at the clock, it says 3:23, right? And when I was doing that rough planning, I said 3:20. That's the thing I was talking about, practice here in the classroom. It's like, okay, 3:20 was apparently wrong, so let's make this adjustment. There's one more input and then some processing, which is a whole lot of copy and paste we'll see. So let's add 20 minutes on that and say, plus a little bit, let's say 3:50. That'll still leave us an hour of lab time to practice these skills. But that's why I try to express that point, because when you get out in the working field, you want to be good at making those estimates. So you want to start to get a feel for how long each thing takes. And it doesn't take much to do it in a classroom, because anything that can fit in the time constraints of a classroom could be done without a plan, which means any plan for something that fits in the time constraints of a classroom is going to be an easy plan. So practice that while you're doing your stuff. It will be useful in the long run. And just keep track of it. Adjust those, make those little adjustments, and pay attention to it so that you're really good at estimating how long something's going to take when you're out in the working field. So that gives us, we go back to that list. Got the text, the color, the caps or clickers, grip pads or metal clips. So now all we need is how many pins do they want? The number input. And then we'll come back to this a couple times, but then that's pretty much the form we're going to work with in class examples the whole semester. And try thinking ahead a little bit. Think about what that next step's going to be and copy and paste as much as possible. Because if it's already tested, you know there's not a typo in what you'll be copying from. So it cuts down the chances of typos, and it just saves a lot of work. So the last one is the quantity. The quantity need an input, and this is going to be a number. So type equals number, name equals quantity. I'll set the default value of 1. We're going to assume that if anybody's going to the order form, they want at least one batch of pins. That will be batches. And I'll add those words afterwards. So 40 to a batch. I just made up that number. I've never ordered pins like that before. I don't know how big a batch of them is, but I was like, okay, 40 sounds like a box of pins. Charge a couple dollars. Those prices I put on that list. I just completely made those up. We'll say a batch is 40 pins, and then we have some prices for whether for click pins and prices for cat pins that we'll get to in processing. And how many do they want? And that should finish our form up. All right, that gives us a number when there's some error handling because currently negative options. We don't necessarily need that. But we don't have to specify step size because the default step size is step by 1 integer. We're not going to sell parts of a batch. If I type some letters, with my hand up so you can see it on the camera, letters don't go in, only numbers get typed in there. But that's our form for class examples. Does anybody have any questions about that? And the wholesome,
no,
we're going to add.
It looks for the most part like it translates to the assignment. Yep. Different order of things, but
different order.
All the different kinds of buttons are there, and
you have 6 checkboxes in the assignment, but that's copy and paste. Once you do it once, it's copy and paste.
Yeah. If I could screw it up once, I can screw it up 6 times.
Exactly. So yeah, the assignment, these examples are going to be exactly like the assignments every week. And the assignments and examples are set up to kind of continue like that the whole way through. So now we need to grab the rest of our stuff there. So the next thing on the form, the color, is those radio buttons, which were named style. So once again, we'll grab them in the same way, which means copy and paste. Or in Notepad++, and I believe Sublime, I'm not sure about Atom, but in most of them, Control-D, as in dinosaur, is duplicate. So put your cursor at the end of the line and hit Control-D, because we're still getting it by post method. That's not changing. We're putting it in a variable, so we still have the $sign here. This is a C family language, so we need the end of instruction character there at the end, the semicolon. And we can just double click here on color and change that to the next one, which was style. And change that to style. And that's in the array that was called style. Then we can echo that back and make sure it works. Save that. I'll just hit, that'll probably work. Hit order. It's set for cap. Go to the clickers. Hit order. And then echo back click. So that works. We haven't looked at what error messages look like if it's not there, right? So I'm going to take the T out of style. I'll put a typo there. There's a little typo. What happens here, if we go hit order, our message looks like this. I always like to look at the error messages in class to talk about what to do with them. So undefined index. Index refers to an array. So the only arrays in our code thus far is that post, the array of things, data being sent with post method. So one of those indexes, what's inside the square brackets, has to be off. So that message is pretty clear, right? and they tell us it's on line 4. Even tells us which one it is. So on line 4 has no idea what this index is. I always like to look at the error messages in class because that's kind of an important thing, being able to learn what to do with those. Change that to style. And if I hit reload, I get this message, confirm resubmission. We can either continue. What's best when you get an error, the error message, go back to the form. And if you use the back button to get there, it'll still be there, and then go again to make sure it works. I saw something pop up in the chat room. I thought I clicked the button, but it didn't. There it is. That is the default PHP error message. The server couldn't run the script, so the server sent an error message. We cannot customize that one, but we will have error and exception handling abilities. We will see those in week 4, I think. And then we will send custom messages back. But because we never want the user to see that, but when we're debugging stuff, we need to see that message, right? It told us what line the problem was on and detailed information. So we will need to see those, but we never want the user to see those. So we put together custom messages for a user eventually. Yes. We just echo the normal message, and sometimes we have to ignore them. Right? Maybe we have 50 lines of code, and we're changing some stuff up near the top, fixing some things, but that's causing error messages 20 lines later. In that point, we have to ignore them until we get everything fixed. So that kind of goes back and forth. But by the time you release it to the users, you should not see any of those error messages. So the next one, again, I'm going to put my cursor at the end of that line and hit Control-D to duplicate. The next one was the first checkbox. Right? The first one was called grip. So I'm going to double click there and change that word to grip and that word to grip. And everything else already works, so I know there's not a typo in the old stuff. So I'm going to save that. I'll just hit reload. So by default, that checkbox is unchecked. What do you think is going to happen when I hit order? Any guesses?
When I tried with mine, I got an error because it was undefined because there was nothing checked.
It's undefined. So I know what the answer is, but let's go through some trial and error. So undefined index grip. On line 5. So ultimately, that's what I want to echo. I'll just go ahead and put that there. Double check that. It's spelled the same there everywhere. Can check over here. It's spelled the same. Maybe some trial and errors. The index looks right. What happens if we check it? So I'm going to check grip and now hit that. It worked that time.
Well, yeah, that works. Yeah, as long as it's checked, it works.
It says
if it's
on.
Not checked, it doesn't. So how do we get around that?
If it's not checked, it's null, and it's getting around it. So what we do, I brought this up very slowly like that to work in one of the, I've mentioned a lot already, PHP is full of pre-built functions for us to use. One of the ones that we are going to use a whole lot in PHP code is set. And then we'll pass something in. And remember we have that official PHP stuff. I'm going to go over here and put isSet and PHP. Remember we have the php.net, our official API. So look for that in the Google results. And what this does determines if it's considered set. It means it's declared and it is different than null. Null is less than empty. null is less than all zeros, right? If you think about binary code, if we have 8 bits, we always talk about put a 1 or a 0 in there, right? What if we don't put anything in there? What if we don't put either one and just leave it floating? That's what null is. It's less than empty. So that's what happens when we don't check our checkbox. And hopefully from that,
yeah, that was one of my
you
first
can already
questions
see
when I
that
played.
this is going to be a very, very useful method that we're going to want to use a lot. Like, is that variable declared and set? So we can put that into an if-else block. So here's our first example of an if-else block. So if, and then in parentheses, we'll put some stuff, and then in curly braces. That's what we were looking at the other day. If this condition is true, we'll do some stuff. So if that method is set, and then in parentheses, notice we have parentheses inside of parentheses here. They kind of add up. Yes, exactly. Null is less than 0. Null is everything's in floating point. We haven't even put all zeros in there. Null is emptiness. Think of it that way. Complete, like undefined. There's nothing there. So is set, and we want to know if this is set. Remember, we just checked. If the box is not checked, we get an error. If the box is checked, we get the word on. So if it's on, that means this will be true. Does that make sense to everybody? So if this is on, if that returns on, then it's true. But if it's not on, then it'll be false. So this is actually an if-else situation. So if this is set, that means the checkbox has been clicked, it says on. Well, then we want that grep variable to hold the value grep. I'll just put that word in there. But if that checkbox is not checked, then we want the grep variable to hold the words no grep. Does that make sense to everybody? I can't see any videos. Hopefully that's making sense. You're going to do that on your homework a bunch. Because that's one of the things we're going to clean up. I put it on the homework like 6 times. That way when we get to functions in module 3, that's going to be one of the big ones to clean up. Then you can just run one function that does that one time and everything just calls that function. So, but it will be copy and paste, right? Because that's what we're going to do for every checkbox. So now if I hit order while that's checked, it says grep. I'll come back and uncheck the box and hit order. It returned no grep. So it's like a Boolean value. It's either on or null. So we have to use is set to see if it's on. Because if it's on, that would be, then is set will be true. But if it's not on, if it's null, then is set is false, and we run the else block. Everybody okay with that? And then our other checkbox is going to follow the same logic, right? What was the other one? Metal. So I'm going to copy that. So select all of it, Control C to copy, paste that in, and change all these to say grep to change to say metal. Metal, metal, and for the words, I'm going to say metal clip or plastic clip. And that goes in the variable called metal. I guess we can echo it back now. Just to check, again, checking every place along the way. Unchecked, it returns plastic clip. And if I check it, it returns metal clip. So we have to use that condition there, and then that is set variable. We use that a lot. That is something that gets used in a lot of different places. So we'll see that over and over again. It's either true, it returns true or false. So it goes right into a condition. So it's always if. So it almost always looks like that too. If parentheses, if set, parentheses, whatever we're checking, then a couple sets of closing parentheses because we have them kind of nested in there. Then curly braces, because we're in a C family language, and semicolons at the end of each instruction for what to do inside of that block separated by curly braces. What's next? Words. Oh, numbers, the quantity. So how many are we ordering? So I'll go over to that confirm script and add one more in. And that a number box is a lot like a text box. It just has some built-in style rules that won't allow text to be entered in there. It can only enter numbers. And it has those arrows and things like that. But we won't have to do a fancy check on that. So quantity equals $_post in square brackets. The name field was quantity, or it would have been a whole lot easier to copy and paste that from somewhere else and just check it there at the end. So very little that. I'll try like a 4. Echo back a 4. 5, 6, 7, 7. Echo back the right number. So it seems to be echoing back the right numbers. So now there are 2 things left to do on that page. We need a message. We always have input, processing, and output. We need that output. It says, okay, you ordered 5 pins with yellow casings, grips, and plastic clips, and whatever the total is going to be. So all that processing stuff, we need that string echoed back, and we need the style of the rest of the site. So this is the point I always like to go ahead and bring the styling over. And for that, it's more copy and paste, right? Because we have that over here. It's going to fit the style of our page. It's still going to look like our wireframe. It'll have the company name up at the top, that navigation, so we can still get to the home and order menu. And then the content area is just going to have the echoes, the strings coming back confirming our message. So all of that stuff can be copied and pasted over. Notice there's a lot of copy and paste involved in this, right? Hopefully that's another one of the things that's going to ease your worries about the workload, right? For those taking those 3 programming courses at the same time. That's going to happen in all your courses, but it happens an exceptionally large amount when doing PHP stuff. There's tons and tons and tons of copy and paste. So that's going to means a lot of the workload is just Control-C, Control-V, or Control-D to duplicate those lines, and that way the code's still nice and organized. So we can copy all this stuff over. So I'm going to go to the index page and start here and drag all the way down to the opening article tag. And then our confirmation is what goes inside there. So all the way down to the opening article tag, I'm going to copy that. So Control-C, And then over on the confirmation page, I'm going to paste that above where that PHP tag starts. And just to make it look nice, I'm going to highlight all that. With the whole thing highlighted, you hit Tab and indent it to the right spot. Maybe one more there. There we go. Bring that over so it's indented to the right spot. And now I'll go back over the index and copy over everything afterwards. Oh, whoops, that one needs this. Oh. There we go. Got all the indenting and white space set up, make it easy to read. The PHP script is in the spot it needs to be now. And all of that the styling should be there because we're still linked to our style sheet. And we have that navigation to bring it back. So let's give this script a try now. So after copy and pasting, I'm going to put some stuff in here. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's not all echoed back. Click different buttons, hit order. And still just that last echo, but it looks like the page now. And also, I'm going to throw an error message in real quick. Somewhere around here. I'll do the same one. I'll take out the T from style. So if there's an error there, whoops, go back, hit order. So you can see that error message comes back and it picks up the style of the page without any trouble. So styling the stuff is no problem at all there, right? Copy and paste makes things a whole lot easier. And all of that is exactly the same from the other pages. And kind of expecting the same thing from the words. Yeah, this is taking a little bit longer than I had anticipated. So I'm just going to put one price on here. So maybe with all these variables, I'm going to scroll up to the top. And I know in those notes, I put 2 different prices. We might change that on Thursday. I'm going to put a price. And the syntax I use for constants or in general is I use camel case on variables and I use all uppercase and underscores. So this type of thing, notation, that's what I use for constants. And our price will be a constant. I'll just call it price. So it's all uppercase. Could be more specific. Pin price, because when we aren't quite as pressed for time on Thursday, we'll probably put 2 of them in there and do some simple math, choosing which price it is, which would just be another if else block. And I'll say $2, 2.00. I have no idea how much pins like this cost. I just made up a number. Let's say $2 a batch. So then our subtotal should be easy, right? Does everybody know the formula for subtotal or total? Since we'll ignore tax for now. I'll just call it total. And our total is the price times the number we ordered, right? So we have this variable pin price, which is actually a constant here. And we have the quantity. So our total will just be that. Pin price times, remember multiply, the asterisk is the operator for multiply. Pin price times quantity. And then we can echo back some sort of message. And these, I like to build strings up. We could put it all in one line. What's in the? Oh, no, we don't need the brackets here. We already pulled it out of the thing with brackets and put it into this variable called quantity. So we can just use that one. That answer your question, Tiff? I hope so. Oh, there it is. I was expecting something in the chat room there. Which isn't wanting to open when I share the screen for some reason. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that's why we pulled it out of that stuff with all the brackets and fancy things and just put it in like a normal variable name to make it easier to work with. So we can use that easier one. We could have skipped that step and just used this right in that there, because those are the same thing, right? This is just an element in an array, and here we assigned the whatever elements in that array to this variable to make it easier to work with. So I'm going to make a string called confirm. And we could do this in one long line, concatenate all that stuff together. And you might remember, really, it's not even concatenation because we have the $sign. We have that loosely coupled language. So we can throw those $sign variables right into an output string. I still like to build them up. So I often start with an empty string and then use that assignment concatenation operator that we saw to keep building things to that. So then that confirm, and we can use dot equal. That's the concatenation assignment. Remember, that's the same thing as like x equals x dot more. So that happens a lot. So we can abbreviate that where the new value of the variable depends on the old value of the variable by using any of our operators right next to the equal sign. So like space, then our 2-character assignment operator. So we'll add to that string some confirmation. So like that is quantity. So I'm going to make up some numbers as I put this string together. So that is like so many of those, right? So I'll say 5 red pens. That is like 5 dot equal color pens with grip, because remember, grip either has the word grips or no grips, just a confirmation on what the order is. And then build up that string slowly over time. Does that make sense to everybody?
Oh. Yeah, typo on confirm.
Oh, thank you.
I ought to know I make enough typos.
Yeah, and that's another reason why copy and paste. So now I can hit Control D and just do the next line. So I'll make up some numbers, things to put in there. So that is 5 red pens with no grips and metal, which I probably should have called clips. It might have been better names, but that's one of the things. Right? This is just coming together now. We're going to refactor this. That means we're going to clean up the code still. So there's probably could have called that clips instead of metal. Come up with better names. And metal, and that'll either have metal clip or plastic clip. Control D. That's everything, right? That's so many pins and the color they are, colored grip. Color, what do I call the caps? Caps and clicks, right? Style. So many like red style pins. So many red cap pins or so many red click pins with the grips or no grips. And metal period. So that'll be the confirmation. Oh, well, I'll just go ahead and put it here. Then in the next sentence, but next line, your total will be whatever's in that total variable. I think I need a space here. Does it make sense to everybody what I did there? We could have done that in one long line and just kept concatenating that stuff together. But I've just found it's useful to split that up over to several lines, especially when we need to come back and fix stuff and make adjustments. And that's basically what the homework's going to be. You'll grab all the data from the form, do any simple math for the pricing and things, and then echo back some confirmations. Yeah, probably should have put that in 2 lines. We'll clean that up later and put it in 2 lines. Then we can echo that. And when we send it back, we're going to want to do some styling and stuff, right? So maybe put it into paragraph. I'll put it in paragraph tags. I believe when I did my practice run on the homework examples, I used a list. I put it into an unordered list to keep all the confirmations right in order, and then echoed back a final confirmation statement. But however you want to put it back, as long as you put together a repeat of, confirm the order and state the total. Then I'll echo back paragraph tags and whatever's stored in that confirm variable. And that should be everything. I guess it's time to check and see if I made any typos while I was talking there. So go back to the home page. And I'm just going to put my name on a bunch of green pins with clickers and metal grips. And I want like 3 batches. So now before hitting order, I want to think about what that confirmation message should look like. Did I put logo on anywhere on there? Oh, probably need that. And metal grips that say logo. Definitely wanted to confirm that message, right? So think about this. So that'll be 3 batches. There's 3 batches of green click pins with metal clips that say Chris. For what is it? 3 times 2 should be $6. Oh, might want that in the total. Notice total is going to be a dollar amount, right? It's going to be $6. But the $sign means something to PHP. So we need an escape sequence. If we actually want a $sign, we need a backslash, which means escape out of the code, then put a $sign. So anytime you need things that are included in the code, backslash, quote marks. If you're sending back a string that will have quote marks inside your final string, you'll need to escape out of the code to type that. Just use a backslash. new lines. Sometimes we have to escape out of our normal coding to put a specific character in. And the $sign is one of them because the $sign means something to PHP. So \$ to get a $sign. And then this order that's loaded up here should say for $6. So having thought that through, there's 3 batches of that color, which I assume is green. Click pins with no grip and metal clip that say Chris. Your total will be $6. It looks like everything came through there, right?
Yeah. Is there a way to format that $6 so that it'll give it to you in 0.00?
Yes.
I had to ask that question.
I think it is just format. Format, currency, and PHP. I'm gonna look it up real quick because what I'm thinking, money format. I was thinking of the, oh, no, that's been deprecated. We'll have this thing go right there. Looks like they got rid of the easy one. And what I was thinking of is, I'm remembering the JavaScript one.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking, whether it was anything close to JavaScript or if there was an F format, an F tag or some crazy thing like Python or what.
So all of their examples there. Yeah, so it'll look like this. So we have to make an object and do this. So it looks like there's not an easy way. Format, maybe instead of currency, just decimal places. That's what I was thinking. I always remember how to do it in JavaScript. I think this is it, unless this one's been deprecated. No, this one works. Number format, the number we want formatted, and then the integer number of decimals. So that is almost like JavaScript. So type in number format. Oh, for that, we will have to leave the string. So in the string, and I'll put it on the next line. So then, again, do confirm, concatenate assignment with number underscore format, which should turn blue, the number we want formatted, and then how many decimal places to show. And everything else there was optional. I think in JavaScript, it would just be format, right?
Right.
Confirm on line 57.
Yeah, I was thinking Python because that's the last thing we just did in.
Oh yeah, it's really easy in Python. What did that not recognize? Oh, and notice it didn't recognize what's on line 57. It didn't expect to hit confirm. Look at that error message. So if we go here, everything's fine with that. But at the end of line 56, there was no semicolon. So it got to that next line, and it was expecting the previous line to have ended. So whenever you see that unexpected and it shows the first word, what you know is the first word on the line where it says the problem is, that's a good indication there's a semicolon missing on the previous line. There we go, that worked. Does that look better, Joe?
That looks pretty as a picture. Now I'll have to do it in mine. Since
And then we can do a lot of formatting because we can echo back other HTML tags there and throw them into our CSS and make them look nice. Print the price really big. We could load in some sort of span and actually show that color because we have a hex color. We could just make that our background color of something, or we could find some way to actually show that color. Got the whole message, and that's what the homework has a little bit more, but it's basically that, and it will be copy and paste. You could probably copy and paste this and have that as a starting point. Does anybody have any questions about all that? And that's our main work for the the first homework assignment, something like that. It's a little bit bigger, and then every week we're going to clean it up. There's some redundancies here, right? If we start scrolling down, like that's an exact repeat with just a couple words different. That's a perfect thing to put in a function. Some of this stuff is very similar. We can work those into arrays and maybe clean up some of the names that just kind of ended up being those names along the way. And it's still part of our site. That was the whole point of having the 2 pages, is we can go back to our home page and the order page and get back to our site after placing that order. Yes, the last comment in there, did that just come up? I didn't see that one, last one, 406, yeah. So Tiff just put in the chat room, gonna have to play around with it and get used to the rhythm of this language. And yeah, that's what it is. It's an active subject. That's why there's lab time every day, which is pretty much the rest of what's on the agenda for today. I'll check these off. We reviewed HTML, did the active version of the PHP crash course in syntax. We're going to see this stuff repeatedly, so we'll get more of a feel for it, but hopefully that's enough to give you kind of a start there. And then a reminder of that thing I was talking about earlier with textbooks. Pause when you get to the example. Think about what your algorithm would do. And when reading a programming textbook, like I said, you should periodically get frustrated and throw your book aside and be like, that's a silly way to put the algorithm together. That's when you know you're reading a programming book correctly. So I had this list here to make sure everything's checked. Conditional, remember to use is set for the checkboxes. Point out how much copy and paste there is, especially on the variable assignments and those if-else blocks for the is set. Those are duplicates of each other. You could do that entire output in one long line of concatenation, but splitting it up like that makes it a whole lot easier to deal with problems, right? When it's just a little bit in each line. Remember, computers do small things, ones and zeros. So more small things is better. Makes it a lot easier to fix problems and get HTML. Oh, the last note I had on my remember to go over before homework was obviously meant to be read last week. So that was the notes I had. Any questions?
You'll be there a few minutes, right?
Yes, I'm going to keep my video set up here till 4:50.
Okay,
so it's our lab time.
I've got to take care of some business for just a minute, but I have some questions for you.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to be here for a few minutes. I believe some other people had some questions too, but that'll be it for the lecture, I guess. And I will see you all on Thursday, and I will be here until 4:50. And a couple people had questions, so I'm going to be sitting here still on the video for a few more minutes. So if you have any questions, you can hop back on here. Text messages and Ivy Learn message inbox messages make a noise on my phone, so I get those immediately. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Quickest way, and I can be back on the video in a couple seconds. And if it's not during our class time, I will still get back to you and help you as soon as I can, but I just won't have my whole video set up ready to go. It might be more than a few seconds, but you can always ask me a question anytime you have one. otherwise, that'll be it for today. And everybody have a great afternoon. I'll see you Thursday. Let me know if you have any trouble putting that into action.